Warning: the Curious Native podcast contains mature topics and themes that are intended for an older youth and adult audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, welcome to the Curious Native Podcast. I'm your host, Hunasmakatan, and in today's episode of the podcast, we will be taking a look at a pretty amazing black gay rights activist and African American civil rights activist who, alongside with Philip Randolph, planned the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That's right, we will be taking a look at Bayard Rustin and his life and legacy. So, if you're interested in that, please keep on listening. So let's just jump right into this. Who is Bayard Rustin? Bayard Rustin was an African American leader in the social movements for gay rights, civil rights, socialism, and nonviolence. Bayard Rustin was a visionary activist who has been called the unknown hero of the civil rights movement, a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., and the architect on the 1963 March on Washington, which I will be getting to in just a moment, because that is like a super important moment, just period, in civil rights history. So sorry for all the noise if you're hearing the papers. I have a lot of notes. So Bayard Rustin was born on March 17th, 1912, in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He was raised by his grandparents, Jennifer and Julia Rustin, who were Quakers from which, this they because of his grandparents being Quakers, they're very non-confrontational. Their religion and belief system is very non-confrontational. He developed his beliefs from which he said were based on the concept of a single human family, and the belief that all members of that family are equal. Which is nice. If anybody's curious, the definition that I found online of what Quakers are, that I could explain easily, because this podcast episode is not about Quakers. I'm sorry. That's not what I'm getting into right at the moment. But Quakers are people who belong to a historically Protestant Christian set of denominations known as the Religious Society of Friends. Members of the movement are generally united by the belief in each human's ability to experience the light within or see that of God in everyone. As a teen, Bayard played left tackle on the high school football team, which I didn't know if I should mention this because I couldn't verify it, but I seen it being mentioned, so might as well um might as well bring it up. So, according to legend, Bayard organized a sit-in at a restaurant that would regularly serve his white teammates, but not him. Like I mentioned, I couldn't verify this, but I really liked it, so I thought, why not mention it? After high school, Mr. Rustin attended a handful of universities such as Cheney State Teachers College, Wilberforce University, and City College in New York City, where, pretty importantly, he joined the Young Communist League. And the reason why I commented on its importance is because it highlighted the way Bayard wasn't ashamed to speak his truth and live his truth, especially when it came down to his sexual orientation as a gay man, which I wanted to take a minute to talk about that. Bayard Rustin was born in 1912 and was out for most of his life in a time where he could have been killed just, for existing. He was an openly gay black man. And I think that sentence, openly gay black man in the 30s, and I think that sentence speaks for itself. When Bayard Rustin came out to his Quaker grandmother, who was noted as being one of the biggest figures in his life who supported him, she said, she said to him when he came out, "I suppose that's what you need to do." I mean, this was a time in history where same-sex marriage was illegal, which in some places in the United States it still is. Rustin had to legally adopt his partner, Walter Neagle, in 1982, so they could get the benefits of a married couple, because gay marriage was not legal then, so he had to adopt him. Because let me give you an example. if Bayard or Nigel were in an accident, they would not be notified by the hospital. They would not be allowed to go in there and see him, and they would not be, uh, they would not have any rights to, any wills, anything like that they left for each other. So the only way to get these benefits were for Rustin to adopt his partner Walter Nigel.
Fired on a corner at 42nd Street and 7th Avenue, Times Square, in 1977. I was 27 years old and he was 65. There was this tall, handsome, very attractive man standing next to me, and we looked at each other and I was pretty much toast. In 1982, Bayard adopted me so that we would have some legal protections under the law. We were legal, father and son. This was a time when gay couples had no protections, no rights. Other people were maybe a little shocked. It didn't really matter to us.
Okay, now that you know who he is and some of his early life, I wanted to talk about some of his accomplishments as a gay rights activist and African American civil rights leader. Bayard Rustin had always been into human rights and activism as a teen. Bayard would fight against racial segregation. One example that I kept coming across, so I'm going to mention it. Bayard would go to the movie theaters and refuse to sit in the gay, segregated section of the cinema, which, you could be jailed. In this time, you could be jailed for that. Bayard's activism continued into his college years. In 1937, Bayard moved to New York and enrolled at City College of New York City, where he joined the Young Communist League, which I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about this, so at the time was dedicated to advancing the rights of African Americans and protesting racial segregation. But when World War II broke out, the party abandoned its efforts in supporting Black and African American rights, which, it left Bayard frustrated and angry and, feeling, unimportant in his party. So he left, and not long after, he began working with A. Philip Randolph, an African-American civil rights leader, very famous civil rights leader. Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph began working on a march in Washington in 1941 to protest the racial segregation in the armed forces. I'm sorry, my notes are a little messy. President Roosevelt, wanting to avoid, such a public protest, especially during war times, this is World War II, issued the Fair Employment Act outlawing discrimination in defense industries. So Rustin and Randolph canceled the march, but, that didn't stop them. In March 1963, a march on Washington protesting for jobs and freedom was planned by Rustin and Randolph. This is a monumental moment for the civil rights movement. It brought over 200,000 people to protest and show support for civil rights, which were pending in Congress at the time.
Bring to you the executive director of the March on Washington, the man who organized this whole thing, Mr. Bayard Rustin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first demand is that we have effective civil rights legislation, no compromise, no filibuster, and that it includes public accommodation, decent housing, integrated education, FAPC, and the right to vote. What do you say?
The March on Washington is also famous for being the event in which Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech, which influenced the federal government to take direct actions to more fully realize racial equality.
Dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
In 1986, Bayard Rustin would go give a speech on testifying on behalf of New York State's gay rights bill. Bayard would, fight for the rest of his life for LGBT rights. He would campaign for civil liberties, that the hetero people had at the moment and at that time that were not afforded to LGBT people. I'm so sorry. Such as fair employment, protection from discrimination and abuse, and same-sex marriage. Not to end this, on a bummer, but in August 1987, Rustin died due to a perforated appendix just 5 years after marrying Neagle. And, I didn't want to say I don't want to end on a bummer, but it is a bummer that he died, by a perforated appendix. Like, that... The contributions to civil rights, gay rights, and racial equality of Bayard Rustin will, not be forgotten. His life and legacy will continue on, and it has, his legacy has continued on. On November 20th, 2013, Barack Obama awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I think that's quite fitting since, that's what Bayard Rustin spent his life fighting for. With all that being said, I do want to apologize, in advance that this episode is really, really short. I have so many more notes that, I could have brought out for this episode. I'm just not keen on doing a whole hour episode. Maybe not. Not at this very moment. Not until I at least get some better equipment and have a better space to record in. I will do a sequel. I don't know exactly when it will be coming out. It will come out probably after my Sundown Towns episode, because that is an episode that I've been working on for like the last month. That episode has so much... I've been working on all these episodes side by side, so, there are a lot of information that I have gathered and collected for these episodes, but I have to find the time and space to record the episodes, which is always an issue. But beyond that, please keep an eye out for the sequel to this, which it should be out soon, since I am literally going to be recording my Sundown Towns episode right after I'm done recording this episode. So keep an eye out for that one. That one should be out soon. I also have an episode that I've already recorded that just needs to be edited, put together. I have to get some clips off from online that I really wanted to put in there. But beyond that, you should be getting some new episodes in the next, I would say, couple of days and weeks coming. Because, like I said, I have a lot of episodes that we're researching side by side. Also, I have been saying this for a while. I've been working on getting a guest, but I'm very, very close to securing, a time and date for this guest to be on. I have multiple people that I've been talking to that are all interested in being on. Also, I'm not sure when and if this episode will come out, but maybe keep an eye out for a review on the Avatar: The Way of the Water, Avatar 2 movie. There might be a review coming out with a guest on. I'm not going to say who, and I'm not going to say when until that actually happens, because I'm not trying to get anybody's hopes up. But, yeah, with all that being said, please go ahead and follow me on my socials. My Twitter, my main Twitter is at Huskasmin, lowercase Huska, uppercase S, lowercase Mini, uppercase T, lowercase Hine. Go ahead and follow the podcast official Twitter page at TCN Pod, at capital TCNP, lowercase OD. And go ahead and follow me on Instagram too at Hunasmak at the end, all lowercase, HUNNASMAKITHINE. That I have been a little bit more active on there, so please go ahead and follow me there. And until next time, this has been the Curious Native Podcast.